Hello and welcome to the Talking NorCal podcast, the official podcast of Active NorCal. I am your host, Zach O'Brien. With me here, as always, it's Backcountry Bob. How you doing, Backcountry?
Feeling backcountry today.
Yep, it's a nice day out. So we're recording this a little bit earlier. I'm actually going to a media conference next week. So it actually rained last night, and today is a beautiful day. So that's a very good thing. We always talk about drought. You might as well push the button.
Rain dance!
Yes, we rain danced as much as we could. It wasn't a ton of rain, but we got it, so we're feeling pretty good. Today we have an excellent interview with the founder of Humboldt Social, Amy O'Connor. We actually talked about her on a previous podcast. She is doing a cannabis-themed hotel up in Humboldt. Super fascinating to talk to her about the industry and cannabis tourism and sort of keeping that local to where it's not gentrification, so on and so forth. So we have that interview coming up. Before we hop into this podcast, please be sure to go check out our store. Go to store.activenorcal.com. Check out, we got shirts, we got sweatshirts, we got hats, we got stickers. Use the code NorCal for 10% off your first purchase. The store's actually doing really well lately.
Hella merch.
Hella merch, yeah. Hella merch. And I've talked about it before, we're up in our game. We're going to have some more great products. We're going to start, printing it with this cool local printer. So support us. We really appreciate it. All the people who listen and who read and follow us, you really help us, enable us to do what we like to do every single day. So thank you for that. Again, store.activenorcal.com. Use the code NorCal, get 10% off your first purchase. All right, let's hop in this episode with the Tahoes. Hella NorCal.
NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and I could spend all day just chilling in the South Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and there knows how to dudes who kick it down in Santa Cruz. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and we get a little cray-cray when we visit the East Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal.
Again, we had to record this a little bit earlier because I'm going to be gone. So we're not going to talk about the usual breaking news stuff that we typically do, which is typically fire, drought, all that stuff. Just a quick update. It rained all over Northern California last night. There was some lightning involved, but I don't think it turned into anything significant. Last week we talked about quote unquote, is there any snow on Mount Shasta, right? Is this the first time we're seeing Mount Shasta without any snow? I saw a picture this morning. It got a fresh new coat of snow.
Nice. How much did it get?
Not much, but it's white. The whole mountain is white. And I think everywhere there was, I think I saw at the Redding Airport, they got maybe half inch rain or maybe a little bit less than that. So I think it came down super quick. But obviously a huge relief for the fires. And so that's good.
How long do you think it's been since it's rained?
A long time. That's a great question.
Months.
May, maybe? May might have been the last little semblance of rain we saw.
That's crazy to think.
Honestly, I can't remember rain at all. It seems like it's been so long, so needed. And again, it was so small, but with the fires,
we'll take what we can get.
With the fires and with water storage and all these things that we always talk about with the drought, it's, if we can get that again, that would be awesome.
Let it ride!
Keep pushing those buttons, Bob, because we need rain really bad. So, again, if something happens, within these next couple days, I'm sorry if we're not covering it this week. Again, I'll be out of town. So we're just going to talk about some stuff that's a little less timely and then get into our awesome interview. So we got the news of the week.
Yeah, first story. Northern California's newest wolf pack welcomes its first litter of 7 pups.
So this is huge news, and I think this flew under the radar a little bit with everything that's going on with the drought and with fires, but we talked about the whaleback pack who were found in rural Siskiyou County. It was OR 85, came down from Oregon and sort of stopped and started living in Siskiyou. and then another female came and joined him. They don't know where that female is from. It could be a offspring of the Lassen pack, and the thought was that they were going to start their own pack. Well, now we have video evidence. 7 pups. They had 7 pups. So now it's a big wolf pack, and this is like huge news. I mean, we almost like doubled the number of wolves in the state overnight.
It's fantastic. You know, we talk a lot about the negative things that are happening in Northern California, whether it be fire, drought related. We're actually seeing things kind of move in the right direction with this story. We've talked about it before. It's really great to see this wolf pack come back from Oregon down and now is procreating and getting bigger and bigger, and hopefully they stay around the area. Great news. Love the story.
It's interesting how they definitely swept this under the rug. The California Department of Fish and Wildlife. I didn't see them announce anything. And in fact, I went back and I searched on their website. They didn't really announce anything. The way I found it is the CDFW does these little presentations on their YouTube page, and they had Kent Lawden on there. He is their wolf specialist, and that's basically his entire job is to track these wolves and to, whether he's collaring them up or he's finding the different trail cams of them, that sort of thing. And I'm sure he goes out and checks out their scat. Is it scat for wolves?
Sure,
I think so. Yeah, they're and tries to figure out their origins and where they're coming from, so he can track all the wolves in the state.
What a wild job!
Yeah,
that would probably be a fun person to interview, actually.
So he does this presentation on YouTube on the CDFW YouTube page, and just in like this short 2-minute span, he's like, oh, by the way, we got some video of 7 new pups of the whaleback pack. Now they are the second full wolf pack in California. This is huge news, and yet they didn't really announce it. My guess is because it comes with some blowback, right? The wolves, as we've talked about, are very controversial with livestock,
farmers
right. and I understand why they're controversial. We talk about it all the time. It's got to be tough to be a farmer and know that, or a cattle rancher and know that there's wolves in your area. And certainly these wolves, they eat livestock every once in a while. So, but it was really interesting that no one really caught this. No media outlets. I was the first one. I'm like, wait, what? And so yeah, we kind of have. I mean, there's the other wolf pack, but there's only 2 of them. They haven't had any pups yet. So this is really the second full family, other than the Lassen pack, to be in California.
And it's 7 pups, and generally, naturally, we'll probably lose a couple of those. But
correct.
We hope that they stay healthy as long as possible and just grow. I mean, I'm a big fan of the whole wolf population here. And we understand how they can be controversial to some, but I personally do. I don't have any, they are not hurting me in any way. So I do have a bit of a skewed opinion, I guess, but I'm an advocate for them. I went to Shasta High School. We were the wolf pack. Let's go.
Yeah. Another reason why they might have swept it under the rug is because the last wolf pack to live in rural Siskiyou County was the Shasta pack, which had pups and had a full family and was the official second wolf pack in Northern California, other than the last pack, and they disappeared. And we did a controversial article questioning whether someone murdered them and buried them. And so they mysteriously disappeared. We have no idea where we went. There's no remnants of them whatsoever, which leads a lot of people to think that they were killed and disposed of. They never caught anyone. And by the way, if they were to catch someone, that person would do jail time.
Right.
Like, it's a real serious crime. Right. So this is probably why they're trying to keep it sort of low key. Let's not have people freak out and pitchforks in the air. Go try to find these wolves. But it's fascinating. And by the way, I don't know if we've talked about the Lassen pack. They announced survived the Dixie Fire.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great news.
Because the Dixie Fire burned through their entire...
Sure.
Because they have kind of like this like huge like 50-mile habitat. You know, they move around a lot, but they stay somewhat in the same area. And that entire area, their entire home burned. But they have like video and photo evidence that they got out and they avoided the fire. So that's good news. So we officially have 2 full wolf packs in Northern California. Kind of crazy.
Wolves are now thriving in Northern California. Love to see it. Love to see it.
Yeah.
Well, the next story is also a Siskiyou County story. Kevin Spacey's new movie is currently filming in Dunsmuir.
Okay, so there's a lot to discuss with this. I am I'm an advocate of films in Northern California, right? We've discussed it so many times. We've done tons of podcasts on movies filmed in NorCal. We're both film buffs. We like talking about it. We like seeing places that we know in movies. So this movie with Kevin Spacey, it's called Peter 5'8". It's supposed to be a thriller, and it's about 90% filmed in like Dunsmuir. And it's supposed to be this like cat and mouse thriller with like religious undertones, and someone's a killer. I'm not sure if it's Kevin Spacey. This is going to be super cool to watch. The town of Dunsmuir, and specifically they said the wildfire smoke actually really helps with its like dark undertones, which is interesting as well. The problem is, and I am not a fan of cancel culture, but I'm pretty sure we canceled Kevin Spacey, and for a pretty darn good reason.
Yeah, I did a little research on that about the canceled. Basically, he was accused of sexual assault from a few people and was potentially going to face criminal charges. All said criminal charges have been dropped. He never actually received any kind of punishment legally, except for he's being sued by these people. Now, he did leave to go to Italy for a while to kind of get out of Dodge, and I personally thought he wasn't going to come back. Now,
right.
Pre all of this happening, I was a huge Kevin Spacey fan.
Yeah, of course. He's a great actor. Yeah.
Unbelievable actor.
Yeah.
I really, what was that series that he just had with on Netflix?
The political one. I didn't watch it.
I did and loved it. I can't believe I'm not remembering what the name of it is. But then as soon as he got canceled, like he was just written off.
Right.
He was the president. He was killed. Spoiler alert. And but the whole show changed. You know, he was really what they hung their hat on. Mm-hmm. And I've just loved him in pretty much American Beauty. That's like a top 5 film of mine.
Usual Suspects.
Oh man. So
yeah, and this is one of those things where you have to separate art from the person.
Sure.
Like Michael Jackson. Like I've always said, you could still listen to Michael Jackson's music. It's still awesome, but
Weinstein.
We all dislike
how
Harvey
many
Weinstein.
movies did he make that are just all-time
amazing.
movies?
Yes.
But yeah, always love to see films being filmed in our backyard. Dunsmuir's an incredible place. I absolutely love it. Drove through there a few weeks ago, spent some time there with my friends, and just went to the farmer's market, got some peaches. It was incredible. So, this is obviously a great story, but we have to mention the fact that he has been canceled.
It's going to be super cool because you and I know that town really well. We've stayed in that town a ton of times, spent a lot of time there. Apparently he's been seen at all these local restaurants, and that place isn't like hustling and bustling all the time. Kevin Spacey walking down the road, you're going to notice him.
Absolutely.
So it is going to be interesting to see. It also, that town has such like an old like 50s, 40s vibe.
Totally.
So with the smoke and with these weird undertones, it's going to be really interesting. I don't know like the plot of the film, but I'm excited to see it. Even though I told myself I'd never watch Kevin Spacey again, because the things he's accused of are pretty terrible.
Right.
But they closed down the entire street for filming, so we know we're gonna recognize a lot of these things. Again, I'm like super into all these movies that are filmed in Northern California, especially these places I know so well, like Dunsmuir. It just, what's this movie going to be like, and what's it going to be like to watch Kevin Spacey? I don't know.
Yep, always love to see Siskiyou on the map. Now, another thing that we should talk about, another Siskiyou County story. Antelope Fire closes the Lava Beds National Monument.
Yeah. I don't know if I have a whole lot to say about this, but this is just another outdoor destination that has been closed to wildfire. We're currently dealing with all of the national forests are still closed. Lassen closed. Much of the Sierra Nevada, people will get mad at me if I say Sierra Nevadas, are closed due to the Caldor fire. You know, there's just a lot of closures right now. So this is one more thing. The Antelope Fire is got a little bit out of control, closing most of Lava Beds National Monument. So again, it's just. By the way, they closed for most of the year last year too. So they've had multiple fires burn through that area over the past year and a half or so.
I mean, I feel like we're at the point now to where we need to have the stories about what is still open. Like, I mean, it's so
Right.
There's so few places that are open based on fire, drought, just COVID, all of the things.
Yep.
It's almost like we need to do this in reverse and talk about what is still open and what is available to go do.
So we actually did a big article that for Labor Day. We said, okay, what's open for Labor Day? And the two remaining national parks remain open. So Redwood National and State Parks is open. Yosemite is open. State parks in general are open, although some of them are closed for different reasons. National, anything that is run by the federal government, like Point Reyes National Seashore or Whiskeytown National Recreation Area, are open. So a lot of places are open. Anything that's like basically, well, no, I was going to say that are federally ran, but that's not true because national forests are closed. But these places are being very careful. That doesn't mean something bad couldn't still happen, but so there is a lot open. But you look at national forests, and that is like, it's huge. That means like you literally can't walk up to Shasta Lake and jump in the lake. That is closed. You can go through a marina. You can drop your boat in through a marina, but you can't actually walk up to the lake and jump in.
That's insane.
Doesn't that? Yeah. But it makes sense, right? Because like people who are just standing on the shore might cause a fire, whereas if you're in a boat, you're probably better off.
You're surrounded by things that put fire out.
Yeah, I mean, that argument, as I'm saying it, doesn't 100% hold true, but I think it's probably, for the most part, boaters.
They still also want to bring money to the area,
of course.
And that is a way of doing it safely. Fairly safer. Who knows? It's controversial.
A place like the Shasta Caverns is open. They received an exemption from the closure because they sort of have control over their guests, right?
That might be the best place to go, especially in like hot.
The heat, yeah.
Oh man, you
And
walk
the
in
smoke,
there,
yeah.
and it's just a different place. And it's beautiful.
Right.
Love that place.
So there's some exemptions, and we listed all those out for Labor Day, but you're right. Maybe we need to do like a bigger, but the thing is it's such a fluid situation, right? So you spend, 5 hours working on something like that, and then next thing you know, they close down half of them, or they open up half of them. Who knows? And by the way, these national forests are supposed to reopen on the 17th. That is they've already pushed back that date once. Like, you would think that that's definitely not like for sure going to happen that they're going to reopen. Right. So
we hope, but
yes,
things change.
So, fire once again continues to be a huge source of frustration for both locals and visitors and businesses and people trying to stay open during COVID. And so this is all tough, but now add lava beds to that list.
Yep. All right. Well, we should probably also talk about the protests for Thule Elk at Point Reyes. What do you say about that?
Yeah. So again, we're taping this a little bit early. So there is a protest scheduled for is it Saturday or Sunday? I have it marked down, but essentially on the 13th, I guess that's Monday, the 13th, the National Park Service is going to sign the lease for the ranchers in Point Reyes, which is essentially, if you were to ask some of these activists, essentially is a death warrant for these Thule elk, right? I mean, these when the National Park Service sides with the ranchers, that takes away all the resources for these wild elk that live in Point Reyes. And we've talked about this a ton, but it really is huge news. It is such a unique situation that these ranchers live on National Park Service, national land, basically federal land, and they run their businesses from these lands, and they take resources from these lands, and in turn, the elk are dying because
Suffering,
of it.
right.
And especially with the drought, there's limited resources.
Right.
So most of those resources are going to the cows from the ranchers, and the elk are dying in large quantities.
Yeah, I am always an advocate for animals, generally speaking, so I'm on the side of the Thule elk in this instance. And we've talked about why the ranchers have issues with this before. But yeah, I mean, if there's breaking news, if some crazy thing happens at this protest, that's what we're talking about right now.
These activists are not going away. And it's, again, this is a super unique situation because when this park, it's this national monument, but when it was founded, part of the deal was that the ranchers can stay. So to go back on that would completely go back on the entire, deal that they made. I don't even know when it was in the 70s, I believe, when they started Point Reyes. So it is, you can't blame them for not wanting to, these are the same ranchers that have been there for 40, 50 years. So you can't blame them for, not wanting to go back on it. Right. But they also need to provide some semblance of a working environment for these Thule elk.
Right.
And, there's a lawsuit from Harvard Animal Law was filed, and these protests are intensifying, and the voices of these activists are intensifying. I'm seeing it all over social media. I'm seeing it in the media, being written about in newspapers. And so this is huge news. And this isn't just because they sign this and they sign a new 30-year lease for these ranchers does not mean these activists are going anywhere.
Right.
So big news. But once they sign this, it's essentially supposed to be done with. So I don't know what that's going to mean for these Thule elk. I mean, we've talked about it. 152 of the elk died in 2020. And which is a large percentage of them, and these elk are supposed to be federally protected, and yet these NPS workers aren't really doing much to help them. So this, I don't know if this concludes this long, turmoil we've seen in Point Reyes, but it's certainly it's going to be a huge part of the story of Thule elk and Point Reyes.
We'll see what happens Monday at the protest.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, and we'll talk about it when I come back to town and we do our next podcast. But I don't know how intense it's going to get. I know how passionate these people are. So it's gonna be intense for sure.
Well, the last thing we should probably mention is we got the 20-year anniversary of 9/11 last weekend, Saturday. So 20 years. What, not NorCal news per se, but we should acknowledge it. What do you remember about what happened?
Well,
where were you when 9/11 happened?
I don't remember how old I was.
I was 17, so you were 15.
15. I remember going to school that day, not knowing what was going on, not knowing if we were all under attack, and it being a scary day. And I know some people personally who had impacted, directly. And obviously it impacted everyone directly. I mean, we've gone through a 20-year war because of it. And our lives have changed because of it in many different aspects. But I just remember, being really scared and confused that day, and being reminded of it every single time I go to the airport or whatever. Everything sort of changed on that day.
Yeah, I remember I was working with our mom, and we were getting ready in the morning to go to the office when the first plane struck the first tower. And so we were watching live when the second plane struck. And I remember I was in her room in the house that we grew up on Copper Drive in Reading. And the day changed. We weren't going into the office. And everyone just kind of, just like everyone in America, was fixated on the television that day. But, we've both talked about that we watched the 9/11 documentary that was on Netflix, which is really good. And one of the things that really, I guess, so I was the perfect age for the people that were in my age group to potentially sign up for the military right then. You're 17 years old, about to finish high school. And I know there are at least 5 guys that I'm still friends with today that literally signed up to go to the military right after high school. And a significant portion of that was because of how they felt about 9/11. So, 20 years, crazy stuff. Things have changed. Our world looks different because of it. But yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge its existence. 20 years.
Yeah, I guess it feels like 20 years. I don't know.
It makes me feel old, honestly. Like,
yeah,
I'm almost 40.
Yeah, somewhat. But I definitely remember more post 9/11 than pre 9/11. Like, I remember, as far as how the world has changed and being in a post 9/11 world compared to a pre 9/11 world where, you took a flight and the person that's picking you up meets you at your gate.
Oh, yeah.
Where nowadays I like getting out of your car at the airport is such a hassle now.
Totally. And I'll meet you in the parking lot.
Right, and rightfully so. So,
or just take an Uber.
It's a different world, but yeah, it's crazy. It's been 10 or 20 years. Crazy.
And that's it. That's all we got this week.
Okay, well, let's go. I'm actually really excited to share this interview that we did with Amy O'Connor from Humboldt Social. We sat down and talked about what she's doing in the hospitality industry up in Humboldt, but also sort of the future of cannabis and cannabis tourism. So let's go to our interview with Amy. Okay, we'd now like to welcome on a very special guest. Amy O'Connor is here. She is a co-founder of Humboldt Social. So Amy, I'm not sure if you know this, but we actually talked about you on a recent podcast when we discussed the Scotia Lodge, and I received a ton of questions about Humboldt Social and who you are and what you're doing. So I'm super excited to have you on today. Thanks for coming on.
It's my pleasure. Yeah, I listened to the other podcasts and I heard so many things where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to go on and answer some of these questions or clear up some of some of the confusion maybe.
Yeah, there's not many things that get past me in Northern California, and I had just not heard about you guys. And as I started doing some research, you guys are doing some really cool stuff. So tell me a little bit about Humboldt Social and how you're sort of creating these unique experiences.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that was so funny on the last episode of the podcast was you were talking about Humboldt Social. Like, we went to their website. They don't have social media. Are they real? Are they a shell company? And I was listening to it and I was like, I have to work on the website. Because Humboldt Social as a company and as a brand is relatively new. We've been in the business of hospitality for about 8 years now. A little bit longer than that if you consider sort of Airbnb experimentations that my husband and I were doing. And we've been doing that we started that about 10 years ago. And our first major public venture was Humboldt Bay Social Club, which is, I think, how we continue to be known, because that is a boutique hotel, only has 4 rooms, a bar, a restaurant, a big outdoor grilling, picnic, fire pit area with an event venue. And then we also have beachfront cabins across the street. And so that's the business that we're most known for in Humboldt.
That's located in Eureka, correct?
It's located right outside of Eureka on the Samoa Peninsula. So we're right on the shores of Humboldt Bay and we look across to Eureka. We can actually see Papa and Barkley Social sort of, from Oyster Beach, which is our beach, the beach part of the property. So we've been doing that. We're coming up on, so we opened that in 2018, and then but this year we've branched out into these other ventures, these other locations. So we opened Pop and Barkley Social at the beginning of this, in the spring. We just opened Scotia Lodge in July, and we're working on our cannabis brand, Social Nature. So doing all those things, we realized there's only so long you can say this project by the people who brought you Humboldt Bay Social Club. We had to create an overarching brand. And so we've done that, but we've also been so busy that we haven't really spent the time to do the things that might clear up some of the confusion about who we are, like creating an Instagram page and all those kinds of things.
Sure. No, it makes total sense. So you started off in sort of the hospitality industry and up in Humboldt. What did you always have a plan to move into some cannabis businesses, or was that sort of just an idea that came off with the legalization of cannabis and whatever, it's been a couple of years now?
Yeah, so we definitely didn't intend to specifically get into cannabis. I think mainly because if you live in Humboldt, you know, there are we have our traditional legacy farmers, and they're the true experts, right? They're the holders of the knowledge. For decades, they know the land, they know the plant. And when legalization happened, we definitely saw a huge influx of venture capitalists and folks who really didn't know anything about what it's like to farm, who had never experienced, getting raided, had never suffered from being incarcerated for cannabis-related crimes. And so we didn't want, I think we have a real sense of protectiveness of Humboldt and of Humboldt farmers. And, outside investment can be really helpful. Legalization is incredibly expensive. So I think we're struggling right now as a region with how do we welcome this investment and some of these new ideas, while also making sure that our traditional farmers are not pushed out, right? We're seeing that right now. The bottom is dropping out of the market for cannabis. Prices are so low that, some local journalists and activists are even saying this could be an extinction event, right? This could be cataclysmic for our industry. So, we're really struggling with that and want to make sure that we're allied with the folks that have been doing the work, right? And have been farming and have really created this region and supported this region for the last several decades, if not more. But the way that we got involved was we had an oyster bar and an all local tasting room in Old Town Eureka called Humboldt Bay Provisions. And we ran that, we opened that because we felt like there wasn't a lot of really progressive or innovative visitor serving organizations in Humboldt. We had seen models in other regions where, you walk in and into a visitor center and it's just gorgeously designed and super informative. And certainly in Humboldt County, the visitor centers were a little bit more old-fashioned. And we really wanted to have a place where visitors could come in and not just pick up a rack card, but taste some of the wine that we make here, right? Or book a tour to go kayaking right there, or find out about local accommodations and actually have iPads where you can make your reservation right there with our help. And so when we created that space, we had this idea that it'd be really focused on visitors, but we ended up having a very large local clientele. People were just coming over for happy hour and hanging out, and they were taking meetings there, or they were just celebrating events or going on dates. We had one guy, we were his first date spot. So we met his first dates. Yeah. Pretty amazing. He was famous. But something that started to happen was farmers were coming in, and as the news of legalization was coming down the pike, we would just talk about it at the bar a lot, and farmers trying to figure it all out and navigate it. And at that point, my husband and I had been involved in local small business and economic development. So well, we are not farmers, we know how to get a permit, right? And like, we know how to navigate, in our case, like a small town politics, and like, okay, who do you go to get this paperwork? And we were informed about how the county and then the city, the local jurisdictions were defining regulation, like how was that working out? And so my husband, John O'Connor, started doing some consulting for a number of different farmers and upstart cannabis companies, helping them work through all the compliance. And then through those relationships, we started learning more and more about the industry, and then ended up doing this partnership with Papa and Barkley, and then partnering with a number of women-owned and led cannabis farms to create our own brand of cannabis products.
You talk about sort of legacy farmers, and I think that's fascinating. Is there sort of some blowback to, you know, people wanting things to stay the same, or has there been acceptance with this, you know, cannabis tourism within the legal market?
I think there's a lot of caution, right? That we have a lot of farmers in a lot of our community that really don't want to lose some of the beautiful things that exist in farming communities, right? And that sense of community, that when you're in the traditional market and when your product is illegal, then all business arrangements are based on trust, right? And relational accountability. And there's a sense of family that comes with that. It's not perfect, right? All families have their drama, but I think there's a real fear that is justified, that when legalization comes in, relationships change, communities change. And I think we definitely see the economic impact of that change. And I think it is the responsibility of folks that are coming into the industry now that it's legal, but weren't connected to it before, to earn trust and respect, right? And to pay homage to the ways that this business has been run previously, and not just run in and be like, all right, we're a startup, you know, welcome to Silicon Valley. We're going to do all these cool things and educate you, you know, country bumpkins. And so I think if folks come in and they have money, two, useful knowledge, and they want to barter basically with those of us who have been here for a long time, and then there's some really amazing partnerships there.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing that you have to sort of wade through, right? With money comes different people, comes quote unquote gentrification, right? And I know some legacy farmers who would probably not want a bunch of rich people in their Patagonia vests walking around town and throwing money around and changing it. You know, we see it, and we've talked a lot about, you know, the cannabis or the Napa of cannabis, right? That's the Emerald Triangle, the Humboldt area. And I'm sure, you know, Napa had some growing pains as the wine industry sort of exploded. But it's, you know, from my perspective, it's going to happen either way, right? You have legalization, and you have this area known for its cannabis. At some point you have to embrace it, but you know, at what point does it go too far? And I think that's going to be fascinating to watch over the next couple, you know, decade or so.
100%. I mean, I think there's many ways in which we want to be the Napa of cannabis, in the sense that we want to see a hospitality industry that recognizes our farming community and recognizes cannabis as a real draw to the region. And for a long time, I think we've had a good old boy network of folks that own hotels, and then we've had our farmers, and there's been no recognition of the relationship between the two. And I was like listening to your podcast, and one of the things we often say is, like, at Scotia Lodge, if we're known as a bud and breakfast, then our business model has failed, right? Because when you go to Napa, when you go to a hotel, you don't walk in and like it doesn't reek of booze inside.
Right.
And like people aren't just wasted hanging out. Like the wallpaper doesn't have to be like prints of wine bottles. You know, here, cannabis is normal, right? Cannabis is a part of our lives and it's a part of our communities. So just in that same way, cannabis should be part of our hospitality model, right? You walk in, and I think there's all this weird stigma around cannabis that, like, I get asked questions sometimes that are like, well, do you have relationships with local hospitals? Like, for what? Right? Like, do you ask that of a place? I have a bar. No one has ever asked me if I have a connection with a local hospital in case someone gets too drunk. Like, alcohol poisoning will actually kill you, whereas people get too high. Like, you know what we have? We have really comfortable rooms where people can go and relax, and like we can put on music, and we will, you know, if people need company to talk them through, our staff are wonderful. But I think that we need to work for us, normalizing cannabis is you check into a hotel, and yeah, we have our wine list here. We have our list of cannabis products that can be delivered to your room. We have a list of local wineries and hikes and beaches. We also have a list of local dispensaries and farms that welcome visitors. And if you're a connoisseur and your goal for this whole project, this whole trip is to visit as many farms as possible and taste as many strands as possible, awesome. And if you're here and you don't smoke or in any way, that's okay too. You can all stay at this hotel. I think that's the model that's what Napa does. Like, I love wine, but I don't know anything about it, right? When I go wine tasting, I'm like, I mean, I don't taste oak or smell notes. I don't have a sophisticated palate, but I love wineries. They're beautiful. I love taking my kids. I love seeing the design around. I love good food. So I think Humboldt's that way too, right? You can come here and you can really have a cannabis focused trip, or you can come and have that just be adjacent to your experience.
Yeah, I think you guys did it the right way. You know, when you sort of announced the reopening of Scotia, you had, you know, the pictures of your elegant designs, and, you know, the rooms looked amazing, and it's this historic, you know, experience. But you guys also allow, you know, cannabis use. I think you guys have a specific area for it outside, right? So it was funny because I was showing the pictures to my wife, who doesn't use cannabis, and she's like, "Oh, I really want to stay here," right? And so it's finding that niche, and I like how you put it. You know, just because you have a bar doesn't mean you want to just market to the alcoholics out there, right? It's So if someone were to stay at the Scotia Lodge, whether they want to be a connoisseur, which I love that word, I think that's the first time I heard it, or just have a normal, beautiful stay on the North Coast, what would the experience at the Scotia Lodge be like?
So starting on October 1st, we're partnering with a local company called Proper Wellness for all of our delivery services. So when they check in, our front desk always asks folks what their plans are, and then offers to facilitate any kind of experience they want to have. Oh, I can suggest hikes. I mean, we're lucky that we're right at the top of the northern entrance to the Avenue of the Giants. So you could be on the Drury Channey Trail in 15 minutes, right? And you could be even deeper into Humboldt State Redwoods Park in half an hour, right? You could be on the river. And some people, that's all they want to do. They are here for the redwoods, right? And then we would love to hook people up with those kind of trail systems and camping or anything that they want to do out there. And then if people are interested in cannabis, then we show them all the products that they can have delivered. And Proper Wellness staff are really happy to talk folks through all the different offerings, and our staff can do that too. And that ranges, right? So one of the things that we've loved about working with Papa and Barkley at the Papa and Barkley Social Dispensary is most of Papa and Barkley products are medicinal, right? So they started out with balms and oils that aren't going to get you high, but they're going to relieve your pain. And so a lot of our guests are older. A lot of our canna curious folks are, I would say, like in their 60s and above. And I'm not saying they don't like to get high, but not all of them do, right? And they are really interested in learning about cannabis for pain, cannabis for appetite, cannabis for anxiety, right? So I think that's a fun experience for me. And then there's other people that are like, how many pre-rolls can I get delivered, and where can I smoke them? So for now, like you said, our smoking area is outdoors. This is California. It's not legal to smoke anything indoors anywhere. We are in the process of renovating the historic bar on the ground floor of Scotia Lodge, and we hope eventually, we're in the permitting process right now, trying to figure out how to make that an on-site consumption lounge. I find the phrase consumption lounge super unfortunate, but that is what the state uses to say, because not everything, right?
What's your problem with, just because there's other people that are there not to consume?
No, because consumption, like for older generations, consumption is associated with tuberculosis.
Oh, I see.
So it's weird. Like, I don't have that association, but we get a lot of people who are like, you shouldn't use that. That's a terrible phrase. So, and I also just feel like it's like clinical, and our spaces are not clinical. Our spaces are casual. They are welcoming. It's not, I don't know, it's not a hospital. It just feels weird. But our goal for that space is that it would be mocktails, right? No alcohol, and that people can consume, whether that's edibles, and I think you mentioned something in the other podcast about making cannabis infused food. That's not something that we do, but we would definitely, our goal, our plan right now is like, we'll make mocktails. And then if folks have tinctures that they want to add on their own, they could certainly do that, but we will not be preparing cannabis infused beverages. We have some pre-made cannabis infused beverages, but it's super important in the state that, servers, producers of cannabis products are very specific about the quantities and the ratio of CBD and THC. Your servers can't do that. That's just not how it's going to work. But if you're an individual, I don't know if all of us, but many of us add tinctures to our coffee, or our smoothies. And so we'll certainly welcome guests to do that on their own, knowing their own their own body chemistry.
It's so fascinating to think about, because there's so many ways that this could go, right? We are in sort of the infancy of this canna revolution, and you have all these great canna words. I wish I had all these, but we talk about food, and you're right, how do we figure out the wordage of these different things? When I was growing up, my parents would say, oh, he smoked pot, but now it's such a different experience, right? You could take it in so many different ways, and there's different CBDs, and there's, you could do like a CBD bath bomb or whatever. There's so many different ways to do it. So it's just fascinating, and watching it sort of grow as a legal product. It's super cool to watch. What's your sort of envision of the future of legal cannabis and legal cannabis tourism, especially in, the Emerald Triangle?
I think that's a great question. I hope it's more of what we're doing now. And I'm thinking about what you said earlier about gentrification. And I think that's our dystopia, right? I really hope that our future with cannabis tourism is that it remains really accessible and varied and local centric, so that you should not be, the cannabis that you consume in Humboldt County should be so clearly connected to the farmers that grow it, right? And that know it. And I think a lot of the fear that people have is that it'll become separate, and that people will consume in an uninformed way, or because I think, for those of us who consume cannabis, one of the things, all right, I'll speak for myself, right? I'm a daily cannabis consumer. I'm also, I also have 3 jobs and I have 2 small children. So how I use cannabis has really changed a lot over the years, right? But one of the things that I really value about cannabis is the ritual associated with it. And, I think for many of us, if we grew up smoking joints or blunts, like you pass it in a circle, right? And there's even rules about, right? You always, which way you pass it and like how many puffs can you take, right? And who's bogarting. And I think that when we created Papa and Barkley Social, and now as we look to Scotia Lodge, we want to make sure that sense of community and connection with the plant remains. And when we had our grand opening at Papa and Barkley Social, one of the founders of Papa and Barkley, Guy Rocourt, was there, and he was so emotional. He was also wearing a 3-piece suit that was cannabis print. It was amazing. And he's been in this work for a long time, and he was so tearing. He said, I never thought I would see the day where we could be doing what we've always done in the shadows out here, right? Out here sitting around couches, fire pits, having the city council members there. We cut the ribbon, Chamber of Commerce came and we did that. And that is, I think that to me is the future of cannabis tourism, is that this whole community coming together and really personalizing cannabis as a part of this region, right? We always say at Scotia, we're in the heart of the redwoods and cannabis country. Like they're just like just like we talk about the confluence of rivers, where what draws people here is our geography, our climate, our people, and our plants.
I like that. I've always said, because we started as sort of this, this outdoor publication, and I always said, like craft beer goes really well with our audience. It's the same with cannabis. And sometimes it's, some people would prefer cannabis or craft beer. Sometimes, you have two, but I do think it really lends itself to the wilderness, to the outdoors, and especially, the redwoods. I'm curious about you. Did you grow up in the Humboldt area?
I did not. I'm from Maryland, right outside of Washington, DC. I came to the Pacific Northwest in 2005, and my husband and I, we met working for a wilderness therapy company in Oregon. And so the outdoors is a huge part of our lives. It's a part of our family. And I think it's also like a real big part of our mental health, how we, in our professions, right? That we met taking kids out on 21-day backpacking trips and rafting trips, horse packing, climbing, and seeing the therapeutic nature of the wilderness definitely shapes how outdoor oriented even our hospitality locations are. Like we're always trying. We live in Humboldt County. It's one of the most temperate climates in the world. You could be outside every single day. Yes, it rains, but it's never freezing cold. It's never, okay, I can't talk about heat because things are changing, but it's not really, really hot. It's not hot the way that it is on the East Coast or even Central Valley. So, I think I grew up in an area that was, when I go back home, when I go to DC, I see a lot of business innovation. And I was raised in an urban environment where I was really separate from the outdoors and like where my food came from. I went to the grocery store, and now my kids, like we get our farm share, like we go to the farm, we pick our vegetables, we know the farmer and the farmer's family. And so that kind of connection is definitely what drew me to Humboldt was John, my husband. He went to HSU. He's from San Diego, and his community was really close here. He was very connected to the rafting community and then the small business community. And so when I met him, we were both relatively nomadic. And he was like, so, I got all these friends. I got all these climbing and kayaking friends down south. We were in the Portland-ish area. And he's like, I think I'm going to go down there and see if I can start this business. And I had nothing really better to do at that point. So I thought I would come to Humboldt for a couple of years, and then it's been a while. And I don't think we just bought a house. So I guess this is it. This is it. I got 2 kids that were born in Fortuna, and I think this is our forever home.
Well, it's good to see like business innovators in these different small communities throughout Northern California and sort of having an outside view of it. And I'm seeing, a lot of really positive changes, not just in like Humboldt, but just all around, Northern California. It's really fun to watch. Okay, last question. So let's say that someone comes to Humboldt, stay at the Scotia Lodge. Maybe they want to go, eat at the Humboldt Bay Social Club. Where are your top 3 outdoor places they should go?
Ooh, outdoor places. Okay. The Malel Dunes, which are on the Samoa Peninsula, about 5 minutes north of the social club, are one of the newer use areas that the Friends of the Dunes has obtained. And those dunes are otherworldly. It's like being on the moon. They're super accessible. So the hike in is like less than half a mile, and then you climb up the dunes. Kids around here sled them because they're that high, and you can just see the ocean, but you're also on this like just lunar, it's like a moonscape. It's incredible. That's one of my favorite places ever. I think in terms of the redwoods, the hike, okay, I love Fern Canyon, but Fern Canyon's a little like Disney World, right?
Yeah.
So you're in the off season, you're there with like 7,000 people, but you can do a longer hike, the Irvine Miners Ridge Loop. It's about 11 miles. It's no joke, but it's through Prairie Creek State Park. So people always talk about the Redwood National Forest, but in my mind, the state parks are really the jewel of Humboldt. So Prairie Creek State Park is right attached to parts of Redwood National Park. But that hike leaves from the visitor center. It goes all the way to Gold Beach, which is just another unbelievably beautiful, very remote beach. You'll see elk. And it goes past Fern Canyon. So if you want to drop in, you can, but you also know that you're like way superior to the people that just drove up doing the super short loop. So yeah. I like a little moral superiority in my outdoor adventures.
Don't we all? Yeah.
Totally. And then we have 6 rivers here. We are in the watershed, 6 different rivers. The Trinity is definitely my favorite. And so going out to Willow Creek and getting on the river, whether there are some super accessible beaches, like Kimtu is just very family friendly. But then there's some other spots that are farther up that, I don't know, in Humboldt, it's complicated with your river spots, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would say, Sandy Bar right outside of Willow Creek is one of my favorite river spots of all time.
I love that area so much. And I do think it is hard to find like specific spots that aren't like, overrun with tourists, per se. So I appreciate a local's perspective on it. Well, Amy, thank you so much for coming on. I really am a fan of what you guys are doing. And I'm fascinated by the whole industry and just localized businesses becoming a part of it, and how it's going to sort of evolve over the next 10 20 years is going to be really cool to watch. So thank you for what you do. I think it's really cool, and I hope we can come up and visit the Scotia Lodge here soon.
I would love that. Yeah, bring your wife. She can do whatever she wants. No pressure.
She just wants to enjoy the decorations in your room. I promise. Yes.
Oh my gosh, sounds like my kind of person. Well, I'd love to talk to her about decorations, where they all came from, the history of them. Most of the furniture, it's a mix of furniture. We bought the inn fully furnished, and so most of the furniture in there is connected, but then we brought in some of our own pieces. So it's always fun to like kind of tell the story of each room and where the pieces came from.
Yeah, no, it's again, that's like a super cool part of it. You're not just like a Super 8 motel that you can smoke weed, outside. You're actually like doing really cool stuff. I do appreciate that. I really do. Well, again, thank you for coming on. You're awesome. We're gonna keep following you guys and announcing anything big. Are there places where people can follow what you guys are doing, or like on social media or anything?
Absolutely. So one, I am going to get Humboldt social media up and running after your podcast. And, but right now, yeah, you can follow us at Humboldt Bay Social Club, Pop and Barkley Social Nature, and Scotia Lodge. Those are all on Instagram and on Facebook.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on. It was great talking to you.
You too. Thank you.
All right.
All right, big thanks to Amy for joining us. I am just so fascinated with, cannabis, the legalization of cannabis, and watching it sort of grow from infancy. It's not like prohibition, right? Because prohibition happened for, I don't know how long it happened, 10 years or not even that, yeah. And they sort of kept it alive the entire time. And then when it came back, they were bringing businesses back into the alcohol world, where cannabis has been illegal like forever, right? That I don't know in the United States.
It's technically still federally illegal.
Correct. But so we're watching it from infancy, and we're watching businesses figure it out. We're watching and it's such a different thing than alcohol. And, I loved how Amy talked about keeping it local and keeping sort of the personality to the Humboldt area and not letting it gentrify, right? Not letting, big cannabis, quote unquote, take over, gentrify the region, and have a bunch of, Bay Area tech guys with their Patagonia vests walking around. Like, everything, she wants to keep it local. She wants to highlight the farmer. And I just really appreciate that. And I'm just so fascinated about what it's going to look like in the next 10, 20 years.
I know personally that the cannabis hospitality industry is something that I personally will be focused on a lot over the next decade, at least more probably, because it's something that I am an advocate for, will be a consumer of, and potentially somebody that will contribute to that industry. I would love to at some point. So love to see it. Great interview. And I can't wait to see what else they have in store for us in the future.
Yes. Them and a lot of other people who are doing really interesting stuff. It's not like alcohol where you just drink something. It's, you can eat it. You can do a CBD bath bomb, like there's all these different ways that they can include it in, like, what's going to take off, what's going to work. That, a million people are trying a million different things, and it's going to be interesting to see what kind of takes off from there. So I'm excited. I'm excited to watch it, and it was really cool to talk to someone who's sort of in the know in the local Humboldt scene. So that's all we had this week.
That's it.
Short week. But we're gonna get back. We got some really cool interviews planned. Gonna talk to some people about fires, which I'm really excited.
Of course we are.
Well, I am. I think a lot of people are not in the know in terms of like fire, like the words you use, and we talk about how the Forest Service is now putting out fires instead of, quote unquote, managing them. What does that mean? Why would you manage a fire instead of just putting it out? There's all these different questions that I get all the time from people, and quite frankly, I'd like to just have an expert tell people. So because I know a lot about this stuff, but maybe it would sound better coming from someone else. So I'm really excited to have a couple more of these interviews coming up. Make sure to subscribe to the Talking NorCal podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, iHeartRadio. We're everywhere. Push that subscribe button. You can also follow us on YouTube. We post all these videos to the Talking NorCal YouTube page, as well as some clips on our Active NorCal YouTube page. Also follow us on social, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, both Talking NorCal and Active NorCal. We're everywhere. We'd love your support, and thanks for listening. And remember, stay active.
NorCal, we're hella NorCal, could spend all day just chilling in the South Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal. And Darren knows how to do to kick it down in Santa Cruz or NorCal. We're hella NorCal. And we get a little cray-cray when we visit the East Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal. And we get a little mental when we visit Sacramento. Yeah, we're NorCal, we're hella NorCal. And we're protecting nature's bounty when we visit Humboldt County. Yeah, we're NorCal, we're hella NorCal. And me, I'm hella cool, 'cause I live in Sebastopol. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal. And you know that we got